Manawa mai te Māori nuku, manawa mai te Māori rangi, ko te Māori kai au, he Māori tupua, ka pakaru mai te pōtau, mai te Māori o haumi e, hui e, tā iki e. Tēnā rā koutou katoa e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā kārangaranga maha o tēnei takiwā o tātou, o tira ki ngā mana whenua o tēnei rohe, te iwi take o te Coast Salish, e mihi atu ana kia koutou, o tira ki ngā tāngata take o tēnei whenua tauri kura o tātou, e mihi ana. O tira e tautoko ana i ngā mihi ki ngā kaiwhakahaere o tēnei o wā tātou nei kaupapa, nui te mihi kia koutou rere tonu ana te aroha, kia koutou mo tō manaki i a mātou kua haere tawhiti mai ki tēnei o wā tātou takiwā no reira. Tēnā rā koutou o tira ki mātou whanaunga, mai te motu o te kāinga, tēnā rā koutou hoki mō wā koutou mihi, hei tūwhera i tēnei wā tātou hui te rangi nei. Kia ora everybody, my name's Julia Kihi-Coates. I, in our Māori language, just wanted to acknowledge the original people of this land and wanted to pay our respects to the Coast Salish people and also to the organisers of this amazing event. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you for your hospitality and welcoming us into your region and into this beautiful house of ours. Like I said, my name's Julia Kihi-Coates. I'm the General Manager of Ngā Āhuatanga o Te Kai, which is an independent Indigenous research institute that focuses specifically on food and food sovereignty. Our presentation today is titled Ūkaipō, Feeding the Next Generation of Kaitiaki. So Ūkaipō is a term that we use to describe our traditional tribal homelands from which our ancestors were and we still are physically and spiritually connected to and nourished by. So today we'll be discussing one of the projects that the Kai Institute completed last year with a group of mums, or mums and dads, so parents of young babies and young children, around reconnecting to our traditional food systems and the importance of developing the palates of our children to actually enjoy our foods so that they are inspired and kind of compelled to continue our traditional food systems. Otherwise, why would they if they don't enjoy it? So that's what our presentation is about today. But before I get into actually talking about the project that our beautiful mama here are going to talk about, their experiences as participants in our project, I kind of just want to take you on a little bit of a journey just to set the context around why, I guess, where we're at now in terms of our food sovereignty in my particular tribal region of Ngāti Awa. So I'll just introduce myself kind of in our traditional way and then give a little bit of a history of our tribal area, and then we'll go into what the project actually looked like. Kawai. Ko Pūtawa ki te maunga. Pūtawa is the mountain upon which the bones of the chiefs of my tribe lay. So that's the mountain up there. Ko Rangitai ki te awa. Rangitai is my river, the waters that nourished and bathed the bodies of my ancestors and continue to nourish my baby today. Ko Ngāti Awa te iwi. Awanui Ārangi is the eponymous ancestor from which my tribe, Ngāti Awa, descend and whose blood runs through my veins. He tamaitia hau no te moana o toi te huatahi, toi kai rākau. I'm a child of the sea, the stretch of ocean that my ancestor toi te huatahi gazed upon from his pā, from his settlement, ka Puterangi. Ko te Pahipoto te hapu, Pahipoto is my sub-tribe or clan, the people of Kōkō Hine. Te iwi tīrare kai pāhau kai nei, the people that are renowned for our skill in gathering, catching and providing plentiful food for all. Like I said, my name is Julia, and that's my pēpī, and references our landmarks, waterways and ancestors, and that's how we usually introduce ourselves at home. So that's who I am, that's where I come from and who I come from, and that's where our kind of story begins around about 200 years ago. So this is the region that I hail from. So in the kind of, if you look at the North Island, it looks a little bit like this. I hail from the region just over here. And it's, our tribe is called Ngāti Awa, and that area is kind of roughly our tribal territory, I guess. So 200 years ago, pre-colonisation for us, that area was covered mainly in swampland, so it was called the Rangitaiki swamp. The area that my ancestors inhabited, they thrived. They thrived in that swampland. They built pā or settlements on little mounds or hills dotted throughout the swamp. And they were avid gardeners, foragers, catchers of fish, birds, and other swamp creatures. They also frequented the ocean. As you can see, we're pretty close to the coast, and gathered kaimoana or seafood and a lot of fish. But the primary source of protein for my tipuna, similar to Rawiri and the kids here, was tuna, so our eels. In terms of colonisation, I guess in the early 1800s, while the top of the North Island was being bombarded with English and other European settlers, down where we were was relatively kind of untouched until around the 1850s. My ancestors didn't really get many visitors until the 1850s. And then it was in and around 1866, on the pretext of punishment for a so-called rebellion against the Crown, our tribe and the government collided and resulted in massive land confiscations. The confiscation resulted in about 245,000 acres of land, which probably doesn't sound like a lot to you because your territories and land is a lot bigger than ours. But for us, to put into context, there was around about 90% of our tribal territory was confiscated by the Crown. So our families were forcibly removed from the land, relocated to small land blocks, and essentially alienated from our traditional tribal lands. The small plots or small land blocks that our families did, or that my ancestors did maintain, was converted into individual title, which is a completely different, concept of ownership of land. That was completely foreign to our ancestors. As you can imagine, being displaced, being moved to different areas, it disrupted our social organisation and also greatly limited access to resources and food systems, such as the tuna, such as the eel. Such was the loss that many of my great-great-great-grandparents actually composed songs to express and to lament the land that they once called home. And so I'm just going to sing to you a little bit of one of the songs that my great-great-great-grandmother composed in the great-great-great-great-grandmother composed in the 1870s, lamenting the land that they were removed from. But I'm not going to sing into the mic because I'm not as beautiful singer as these rangatahi here. But.
Pani ane, pani ki te
So that song there's just, it's only a little verse of one of the songs, like I said, one of my great-great-great-grandmothers composed. And yeah, it references the people feeling completely lost, completely alienated. And it also references the I guess, desire for our people to actually move away because they feel so lost, still being, I guess, on their lands, but not having, I guess, tino rangatiratanga or sovereignty and free access to it. Yeah, so that's a little bit about where I'm from. Wrong slide. In 1912, so the land was confiscated in 1860s. And then in 1812, the local government decided to drain the swamp. So to drain our tribal lands, the Rangitaki swamp, and turn it into dairy farming land. So now it's called the Rangitaki Plains. So this was in 1912, and the draining of the swamp drastically disrupted our food systems when it came to our swamp creatures, our swamp animals, and particularly our tuna, who were used to living in a swamp. And now the local government came and completely drained it and redirected our river, Rangitaiki. So what was a swamp now looks like this. So kind of square or rectangle sections of land, farmland that's used for dairy, cattle, and a lot of kiwi fruit as well. What was else? What was I going to say about that? Oh, yes. And then in 1926, the Hine Dam was formed and built. So the Hine Dam, so yes, there was a draining of the swamp, redirecting of the river, and to kind of add salt to injury. The local government also decided to sponsor and advocate for a hydroelectric dam to be built on our river, like I said, which also drastically contributed to the disruption of the life cycles and access to our eels. So like Rawiri kind of explained, our eels kind of live for a very long time upstream. They migrate in what we call a tuna heke, so usually every 20 to 30 years. So there's certain size eels that go out and migrate. So they're like kind of 20, 30, 40, 60 years old. We've had some 100-year-old breeders recently go out to sea, and they're these big fat eels that kind of get to about that big. So they live, a lot of our eels actually migrate upstream where they live for about 20 or 30 years. They migrate down, but obviously with these kind of big dam structures, that proves to be a massive obstacle to our eels, and they either can't migrate or they end up as kind of eel mush as they get kind of drawn into these massive turbines. So fortunately, we do have some projects to kind of help transfer our eels over the dams, our migrating eels over the dams, but yeah, there's only so much that we can do in that space, and even in my lifetime, I've seen a drastic decrease in our eel catches in our river. And as Rawiri mentioned, so they migrate out to the Kermadec Trench in and around the Pacific Islands, and that's where they kind of dive right down deep to spawn. Their eggs float up to the surface, and they float on a sea current all the way back to their origin river. By the time, so that takes around about 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years for the eggs, the larvae, and the little glassy eels to find their way back to their origin river, where they then enter the river mouth and then try and get back to their origin source, where they'll live for about 20 or 30 years or more, possibly up to 100, 120 years before they go out to breed and to spawn. But with a lot of I guess climate change now as well. So yes, we've got dams. With the warming oceans, our currents are changing, and so a lot of our glassy eels aren't actually making it back to their origin rivers, and so they don't necessarily grow and breed in the same way that they would if they found it back to their origin rivers. And then also the quality and the ability of our eels to grow due to the pollution from the dairy farms is actually affecting that in our tuna as well. So this is my dad and my daughter, Hawaii, going to catch some tuna. We've got, in our family, I've never actually used a traditional hinaki, that Rawiri reference, but we kind of make similar structures out of chicken wire and whatever we've got lying around, and kind of follow the same process. I have a phobia of worms, so I had to close my eyes when I was watching their video, and so I've never actually done ramatuna or that sort of eeling myself, but we set out our hinaki almost fortnightly or monthly to kind of catch tuna, and for me it's really important to include my tamariki and my kids in these practices. So I guess that kind of sets the scene as to why, as to the context of Ngā Huatanga o Te Kai, which is a kaupapa Māori independent kai research institute. We're quite unique in that we are funded, or our shareholders come from two really completely different fields. So Te Punaoro o Mātātua is not a tribal, but a Māori health provider in my region, and Te Whare Wānanga o Awanuiarangi, who is our other shareholder. They are a traditional, well, not traditional, but a Māori tertiary education provider. We function purely on relationship and collaboration. So in our first year, we didn't really have much funding. Our shareholders just kind of provided baseline funding for us to just establish ourselves. And then after that, we kind of had to find our own sources of funding. But we apply for every type of funding that we are eligible for. So government agencies, NGOs, charities, but long-term our goal is to be self-sustainable. And our kaupapa, our theme or the topic that we look at is only food. So things related to food, to our kai systems. Our CEO is Linda Tuhiwai-Smith, so she's our kind of primary founder, and I'm the general manager of our Kai Institute. Like I said, our kaupapa is kai. So kai is loosely the Māori term that we use for food, but to me the word food doesn't actually encompass what kai means to us. So kai to us is much more than food. It's much more than a fuel. It's much more than what we just put in our mouth. It's a way of living, and it's grounded in our mātauranga, in our knowledge systems, and it's part of a system of values, practices, and relationships that reinforces, I guess, our collectivity and our cultural identity. So our goal with the Kai Institute is to undertake research and deliver projects that ultimately support families and our tribe to have access to enough culturally appropriate, nourishing food so that we can thrive in our culture and who we are. One thing that we did want to acknowledge is the work that Rawiri and others are doing. So food sovereignty at the moment in Aotearoa is quite popular. There's a lot of work being done by kind of tribal authorities, by our public health system, in and around the kind of food sovereignty movement. So we didn't want to kind of just replicate what's been done. And we do acknowledge that there actually is a lot of work being done with our rangatahi, with our youth, which is absolutely amazing throughout the country. But for us, like I said, we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. And after Linda and I had a big brainstorm, one area that we decided we really wanted to focus on first was our babies and our really young kids. First and foremost, because like I mentioned before, if our kids and our babies don't actually develop the palate for our traditional foods, if they don't love our traditional foods, if they don't want to eat our traditional foods, why then would they protect our traditional foods and the knowledge that's associated with our foods? Because our food actually connects us to our culture, to our environment, to our atua, to our gods, to our traditional practices. And everybody needs to eat, right? And so why not use food as our kind of vehicle to actually reconnect to our identity? But like I said, if we don't enjoy our traditional foods, why would we then engage in them? So that's kind of been the premise of the first couple of projects that we have rolled out, is actually encouraging families, encouraging mums, encouraging dads of our young babies before their palates have been colonised by the crazy food environment that we live in, where almost everything we eat is, processed, high sugar, high fat, highly salted. And so our babies are actually developing and their palates being conditioned to only like those foods, and therefore our traditional foods are tasting bitter and sour and bland compared to McDonald's or compared to these super sweet sugar cookies and those sorts of foods. And then they eat some of our kumara or our eel, and it doesn't quite taste as sweet and juicy as that KFC chicken that they had yesterday. So that's why we've decided to roll out some projects with our young mums. And for us, where I come from, in my family and our tribe, we consider first foods for our kids, for our babies, to kind of come in three different stages. So there are 3 stages of introduction to first kai, and the first stage is actually when our bubs are still in our puku. So we're encouraged, and for me, I was very intentional when I was pregnant with all 3 of my kids to eat kai from the whenua, kai from our lands, kai from our oceans, kai from our rivers, so that the essence of those foods are imbued into the baby before the baby's even born. The second first food is our breast milk. And we've got lots and lots of stories and narratives around the importance of breast milk and how it connects us to our deities, to our gods, and to our families. And again, while I'm breastfeeding, I'm being super, super intentional around the foods that I eat, because from a nutrition, from a cultural, from a physical, from a spiritual point of view, that's where our baby's getting their nourishment and developing that palate even when they are breastfeeding. And then the third first food is the first solid foods. And so in my family, we're trying to revive our traditions around introducing our first solid foods. And so for all of my kids, when I'm pregnant, my dad, who's an avid gardener, food gatherer, collector, food is his love language. Every time I've been pregnant, he's planted kumara or riwai crops, which are then grown and stored until my baby has their first food, and that's their first food is a traditional sweet potato that's grown in our land by the hands of my father, and then we prepare it and have kind of a small ceremony around those first foods. But again, it's physically and spiritually tying our kids, our babies, to the land through food. And so yeah, those are the kind of underpinning themes that we want to, or that kind of dictate what the focus of the projects that we're currently rolling out. So our very first project that we rolled out was called He Waiu Mō Ngā Mokopuna. It was funded by Te Puni, which is kind of our Ministry of Māori Development. We had a group of 15 parents of young babies and young children, and we hosted a series of wānanga or knowledge exchange forums where we got elders to come and share stories around their food memories, their food journeys with our mums, with our babies, and Kendall and Kiriru were part of that group. Just to tell stories, sit together, talk about food. We also ran a couple of workshops, cooking workshops with them, and part of that project was also around the Mātātua Declaration of Indigenous Cultural and Intellectual Property Rights, which provided a forum for us to step back from the actual hands-on doing food. These are our stories, and stepped back and kind of looked at the bigger picture in terms of protecting our knowledge systems and our intellectual property rights in this day and age. But yeah, like I said, our project was kind of based around the key question around if our children don't experience our food, are not connected to our food, and don't love our food, why would they protect it and why would they choose to engage with it? So I'll just hand over to Kiriru, who was one of our mums who engaged in our wānanga series, and she'll talk a little bit about what she learned and her experience.
Kia ora te whānau, ko Kiriru Hicks tōku ingoa, I te taho tōku pāpa, ko te aroa tōku iwi, I te taho tōku māma, ko te apauri tōku iwi. Engari, e nohana au ki whakatāne, he tauira au ki te whare wānanga o Awanuiarangi. So my name is Kiriru. On my dad's side, my tribe is Te Aroa. On my mum's side, my tribe is Te Apauri. But I live on the same place as her, that my partner's, that's his tribe. And I am a nursing student. Thank you, sister. Okay, I'm a nursing student at Te Whare Wānanga o Awanuiarangi, which is a nursing degree that is done. I got us. Done through a Indigenous lens, so everything we're taught is done through our Māori visions and values. I'll just carry on. I have two children. My youngest, he is just turned 3, and my eldest daughter is 6. So when I heard about what's the word for kaupapa? When I heard about the course that Julia and Dr. Linda Smith were providing, I knew I needed to attend. So in our whānau that we live around and with, we have hunters, we have divers, we have fishermen, but we don't have anyone that does anything with the marakai, the garden. So I was hungry to learn about how to decolonise our kai and lead a more sustainable way of living and eating. I wanted to feed my tamariki, the kai that our tipuna, our ancestors, lived and thrived off. I knew that we have poor nutrition because we don't honour and use our traditional food as it's intended. So I was a really new beginner around kai sovereignty and gardening especially. I have a phobia of spiders, okay? So I would try to go be a gardener, and then I'd see a spider. So I'd run inside, I'd get my fly spray, run back to my garden and shh. But I apologise to that, and every day I apologise to the whenua, the land, for that, and I've moved on. So one of the key questions Julia asked was, if our tamariki didn't know the food and enjoy the food, why would they protect it? And I think that has been the biggest kind of question that we've taken away. And my 6-year-old daughter now, if we're walking and she sees someone throw rubbish, she'll be like, hey, do you know you're hurting Papatua Nuku? Which is what we call our Earth Mother. So we're getting there. So in our family, we've started our marakai, our garden. We had our first lot of riwais, potatoes and kumara come through, and my children have been there the whole process. They water them, they feed them, they talk to them. And it's currently Fijoa season back home, and my son, my 3-year-old, sits under there all day eating the Fijoas. He goes to the toilet so much at the moment, but that's all right. Yeah. We've been going for a lot of walks too around our bushes and we've been gathering kawa plants, which is like a, pardon? Like a peppery medicine plant. We call it rongoa Māori, but peppery medicine plant that we use, and we make tea out of it, oils, what else? Yeah, lots of stuff. And we've been gathering it, and my kids' grandmother's been making it with them and explaining the importance of karakia when gathering, and so that's been a whole journey too. And the third thing that we've been doing is my kids attend a kohanga, which is a like a Indigenous daycare where they learn their language and other tikanga and stuff. Oh my gosh. And there's a saying back home, like, less hui, more doughy, which is like less meeting about it and just get it started. So we wanted to start a garden that was accessible for the whole community. So we've started a communal garden that twice a week the kids at the kohanga walk down and they tend to it, and they gather the kai, they harvest, and they make bundles, and they take it around to the elders of the community and give them the food that they have created. And so it's a connection to the land, to the food, and to the people. So they know the whakapapa, I was going to say, which is like the journey that the food have been on, and they know that they're giving the elders the best of the best kai, that food that they can have. So for me, food sovereignty is such a massive topic that if you're a beginner like myself, I would give you the advice to stay in your lane, like our ancestors have done. So if you're a land person, you don't need to go learn how to fish the deep grates because you're nowhere near there. But you might meet a person that does, and you can trade, because we're from a trading community. Hang on, I need to zoom in. Oh, so kai sovereignty is more than just planting the vegetables. It's about maintaining our rights and responsibility as tangata whenua, people of the land, to feed our children in a way that is grounded in mātauranga, which is Indigenous knowledge, our tikanga, which is our customs and values, and tipuna kai inspired. There's a whakatauki, which is like a proverb that says, he kai kei aku ringa, so it's like, I have the skills and resources to provide for myself, which is our goal. Kia ora. Thank you.
Ka pai, kia ora Kereru. So like I said, Kereru was a participant of our wānanga series that we held at our marae, where we cooked kai, we engaged in lots of storytelling with our elders, and Linda and myself and a whole lot of others that work in kai sovereignty, got to share our stories and our experiences, and really just pose to them those important questions. We weren't trying to convince them to do things like this or like that. It was just encouraging them to actually think about what are you doing intentionally with your kids around food, so that we can continue to thrive. The second half of our project was around the Mātātua Declaration. So we decided to hold a 30th anniversary of the Mātātua Declaration on cultural and intellectual property rights of Indigenous people. So in 1993, Te Runanga o Ngāti Awa, our tribal authority in my tribe, mobilised the tribes of Mātātua to co-host an international conference on cultural and intellectual property rights of Indigenous peoples. And so what ended up happening then was that they held a series of 5 wānanga across 5 different marae, 5 tribes of our tribal collective, with a lot of Indigenous guests who came to wānanga and discuss intellectual property rights, as it was a massive issue at the time. For us, so it started with the Mātātua whare. So I just want to tell you a very quick story about our Mātātua whare. So in 1875, this beautiful whare, this beautiful traditional meeting house was carved by our tohunga, by our creatives, as a response to kind of come together after the big land confiscations that happened in the 1960s. it was a project that united a lot of our tribes. However, in the 1980s, the house was actually, someone asked for the house to be taken to Sydney to an international exhibition at one of the museums there. And so the house was dismantled and taken across the Tasman Sea to Australia, where it stayed for a couple of years in Australia before someone from one of the big museums in London actually asked for the house to be erected there for another international Indigenous exhibition. So the government was the one that actually responded to that call and said, yeah, take it, that's fine. And a lot of our elders actually protested and resisted, but the government ultimately said, well, we're going to take it. We want to maintain this relationship with the Queen, with the Crown, and we want to exhibit this whare at that museum over in London. And so they said, well, we're going to come and take it whether you let us or not. And so our ancestors ended up helping them dismantle it, package it up, and ship it overseas. After about 20 years in London, it got dismantled again and brought back to New Zealand, but it was stored down in Otago Museum, which is in the South Island. And at that point, the Crown thought they owned our whare and decided not to give it back to us. However, in the 1900s, when our tribe was going through the very kind of beginning of our treaty settlement claims, that was a really, really big part of our treaty settlement, was to get our whare back home where it belonged. So that sparked conversation in the 1980s and the early 1990s around, actually, this is our intellectual property. This whare belongs to us. And so, like I said, that was the catalyst for our tribes, our local tribes, to start talking about and thinking about what is intellectual property of our peoples. So, like I said, in 1993, some of our elders from 9 of the tribes in and around our area invited international delegates to come and just discuss what does Indigenous intellectual property actually mean to us, and how can we, I guess, get the powers that be to recognise that. So in 1993, over 150 delegates from 14 countries attended. They had Indigenous representations from Japan, Australia, Cook Islands, Fiji, India, Panama, Peru, Philippines, USA and Aotearoa. The conference met over 6 days to consider a range of issues. Like I said, our intellectual property, but with consideration of our Indigenous knowledge, biodiversity, biotech, customary environmental management, arts, music, language, and other physical and spiritual cultural forms. And on the very final day of the Mātātua Declaration Symposium, this photo down here is of Linda Smith and Aroha Mead and a few others of the delegation who got together to actually draft a declaration, and in the declaration they stated a whole lot of recommendations, first and foremost for our Indigenous peoples and our tribes to consider. Secondly, recommendations to the state or national agencies and governments, and thirdly for the UN to consider. And so on the final day, the plenary passed that declaration be taken to the UN. So these are some of the signatures of some of the Indigenous peoples that were at the Mātātua Declaration 30 plus years ago. And this is Auntie Aroha and some of our elders who took her over to Geneva to actually present the Mātātua Declaration to the UN there. And thankfully, After being returned in 1996 as part of our treaty settlement claim, we got our wharenui back, our mātātua whare back, and in 2011, so after about 15 years of restoration, because it was so mistreated on its journey around the world, in some instances it was actually erected inside out, so our traditional carved panels and our tukutuku woven wall panels, rather than being inside the whare, it was erected with those panels outside, so they were severely damaged when it returned. But after 15 years or so of restoration, it was erected in 2011 and reopened, and that's what it looks like today. So it was actually really significant for us to hold a 30-year anniversary celebration of the Mātātua Declaration in the Mātātua Wharenui, which we were really, really excited about. Oh, and I don't know if the sound's off. We'll skip this because it's a little bit long. But essentially, it was a 2-day symposium. We had, this was our program, so we had speakers like Linda Tuhiwai-Smith and others talking about the history of the Mātātua Declaration, and then where are we 30 years on? And have we made any impact and any progress in that 30 years? So we had one of our only Indigenous Māori intellectual property lawyers come and talk. We had an expert in AI, which is a new type of threat to our intellectual property, come and talk about the implications of AI to our traditional knowledge. We had Dale Takitumu talk about, are we safeguarding or exploiting our knowledge, and how do we actually navigate that? We had a panel of Māori creatives. We had descendants of the Y262 claim come and talk. And so, yeah, it was a really interactive and powerful 2 days where we came together to talk about the past and the future of our traditional knowledge with the current threats. So I'll invite Kendall to come up and talk, who was one of the participants of our project, who helped shape our symposium and participate, and she can talk just briefly around her experience.
Ko Kendall Stevenson tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei o Ngāti Awa hoki, o reti ki Julia. Tai tōku nā mihi kua mihia, kia koutou katoa, arata mai. Yeah, I just wanted to really reiterate the thanks and the welcoming that you have all provided us, particularly you, Charlotte and Tia, out the back with our baby, holding him. So yes, I was very lucky to be a part of this kaupapa. I'm a mama of 3, my eldest carrying the name of who Julia shared, Awanuiarangi. And that was a very significant and intentional choice of naming, as are my other 2, who also carry significant names of the whenua, of the land, of the people who they come from. And I start with that because being a part of this kaupapa really showed to me what I've gained from their actions. So when the question was posed, have they made an impact? Has these actions made an impact 30 years on? Absolutely. Our babies now, they think it's normal to see Māori, the spoken language, on our mainstream TVs. They think it's normal to hear waiata Māori songs on our mainstream radios. They think it's normal that it's available, our main kapahaka, our main cultural expressions is available on Spotify. We were listening to it this morning, playing it for whare kaihua, whilst sitting here in Seattle. So our babies think that's normal. They're going into kohanga, what Kiriru has mentioned. They're going into kura kaupapa Māori, who our babies over here spoke of. this is the result, this is the fruits of their labour. So yes, very much so. And if I direct you, the photo's not on there anymore, but it's quite apparent also to mention that at the time of the declaration was drafted, many of them themselves were rangatahi. They were youths. Linda, who is Drew's auntie, who she's failed to mention, was a rangatahi of her time. But the significant thing about it, and we saw it today, this morning, yes, our youths are powerful, they are absolutely incredible, but what it takes is the support around them. And that's what we saw this morning with our babies doing their waiata, expressing their knowledge, being wrapped in the aroha and love and support of Rawiri, and everyone within that whare. And it's the same, it was felt the same in this kaupapa here. And so to be a part of this 30-year celebration, to learn from great people like Dale up there in the corner. Oh, there's some more photos. And to sit in the whare that Drew shared that story of, that came back to us, that came home. And this bottom right corner is a photo of the mokopuna, of the grandchildren of the original claimants to a very significant Waitangi tribal claimant, Y262, you can look it up. And these youths go by the name of Tai 262, and as I said, they're the original mokopuna, and they've taken on that mantle and they're running with it. They are the next generation, really advocating for the rights and everything that we all are doing here today. But yeah, I thought that was a very significant. And in the right, top left is Whaia Aroha, who really led the entire movement. Is that another? And so just to finish, I just wanted to bring it back to the title of our kōrero today, Ūkaipō. In fact, many of our language, if we think about how we speak, kai is a very significant term. It's how our tūpuna, our ancestors talked. They talked in reference always to either food and kai or the tai, or the environment. Those were the knowledge systems, because that's what was seen, that was how we related with the world. So I just wanted to bring it back to that, and to always hold on to what we are. So, kia ora.
Cool. Kia ora. And just to finish off, like I said, that was one of our projects. We've got many more projects underway now, but that was our kind of first foundational project that has informed a lot of our new subsequent projects and research that we're undertaking now. But what we did find, just want to reiterate, that actually our whānau are hungry. Physically hungry. Some of our whānau don't have access to enough culturally sustainable food, but also figuratively hungry. They're hungry for the knowledge, they're hungry to learn, because through colonisation there's been an intergenerational loss of knowledge and connection to our land and our food. So they're hungry and often don't know where to start, don't know where to look. And so what the Kai Institute is aiming to do is provide forums for our families to reconnect to not only our traditional foods, but contemporary food systems that are environmentally and culturally sustainable. So that's us. We're all getting hungry. I'm hungry. I'm ready for lunch, and I think all of you are too. Nō reira, e mihi kaua tuana kia koutou. Tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.